Yeah, I bought a new phone and I was downloading 8 million photos, and I came across this picture of me and Eddie sitting at a booth, and we're both smiling and we're just sitting there hanging out. And I said, "Oh my God, when was this taken?" I'm looking at my hair and look at how I looked, and I said, "Well, it must have been a long, long time ago." But Eddie's hair was kind of short and curly, and uh, yeah. But I just, well, the rainbow was just such a, it's gone. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
there, but I said that whole with the whole Hollywood scene is gone, in my opinion. I still go to the Rainbow once in a while and get my soup and love their soup. But then the cook died. He was there 40 years, and then Mario Maglieri, who owned the Whiskey and the Rainbow, he owned them both. So he passed away. So it's just like an era that's gone. But I have a picture somewhere where you literally would walk in there if you were a fan of rock stars and musicians, and you really couldn't get in. You had to pay to get in if you weren't somebody. You had to pay, and they gave you a two drink ticket. But you'd walk in, and I remember looking. Okay, there's Rob Halford. There's Roy James Dio sitting next to him in the next booth. There's the Van Halen boys in the back. There's the Quiet Riot guys over there. There's Priest. I mean, it was just all ass to elbow rock stars, because when you play the Forum or anywhere, everybody would bolt, for the Rainbow, because they used to be open later, even like till 3 in the morning. But now, so those days are gone. I mean, but yeah, was it exciting? Hell yeah! And then, like, there's been all these documentaries now, about the Rainbow, movies about it,
Yeah, yeah.
that people don't realize. Before the rock scene, it was John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and all these comedians from Saturday Night Live, and they and Alice Cooper, and they were all hanging out there. And they finally put a piece of plexiglass upstairs, uh, uh, because they all signed their name on this post. There was one private booth. It's kind of strange. It was kind of hidden. It was real dark. And he had stepped on a few steps and was surrounded by walls upstairs. And that was their hang. And I can't remember what they called themselves. It's something Hollywood Vampires, I think. And they signed all their names. And over the years, people started putting their names and adding. And so they finally put a piece of plexiglass over that to protect it. So there was that scene, the '70s, where all the TV stars were going there and movie stars, and I remember seeing Jack Nicholson in there, and like God, old movie chicks that were movie stars and
It's
stuff.
incredible.
And it was really, I would say, yes, it was exciting. What people don't talk about a lot is the main club that we played at, and Van Halen and Quiet Riot and everybody and their mother, Y&T, Judas Priest, was a place called the Starwood. And that was like 4 blocks down from the Whisky on Santa Monica Boulevard. And for 4 or 5 years, that was the place in the mid '80s that everybody wanted to play. And it was really a cool place. And it was laid out where you could be in the concert place and watch the band, or you could walk down a little hallway, and there was a little restaurant. And they made burgers and fries, and you could keep going. And it went into like a dance room where they were spinning records, so you could get away from the madness and just listen to music. But the upstairs of that place, again, was upstairs. You couldn't get up there unless you knew somebody, And until I played there so many times, they finally knew who I was. But I'd go up there and there'd be Kiss sitting there, and Alice Cooper and Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, and they're all up. They're on the
Didn't
hunt.
Motley Crue play their first ever gig there?
Yeah, Motley Crue played their first gig there, I think, before they, the club got shut down. Because there was a lot of weird stuff going on at that club. The owners were involved with that infamous murder with John Holmes, the porn star, and a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
people got
yeah.
killed up in Coldwater Canyon over drugs, and those owners were involved in that. So, and there was a lot of drugs. I know exactly who had them, and they've now passed away. So I guess I can say I always seen that Kevin DuBrow always had Quaaludes on him, which was a pill that was popular in the 80s. Now that they don't
Yeah,
exist
yeah.
anymore. And, like this, the whole thing was you gave a girl a Quaalude and it makes you uninhibited and made your chances of scoring a lot easier. So he had had that stuff. And I remember, they only had one bathroom up there, and I was always trying to get in there, and it just seemed like every time I wanted to go in there, David was in there, locked himself in the bathroom, getting a quickie. I'm like, David, come on, man, come on, go get a room, man.
Legend. The 80s was that time of unbelievable decadence. But I mean, I've seen you quoted before as saying that you were never really into the drug scene, the cocaine thing, but you were more of a
Thank
champagne and
God.
wine man.
Yeah, that's what it was. I would drink a rum and coke or something like that, or have some kind of a vodka grapefruit once in a while. But I just never got into the heavy drinking, and the coke thing. I didn't get it. I just didn't get it. Because first of all, it's bad for your throat, and I just didn't get it. I was hyper enough already. I didn't need to be any more hyper. But like they said, they say in many movies that if you bought cocaine in the 80s, there was an 80% chance it came from Carlos
Ugh.
Escobar, because, and apparently it was like real pure, and you didn't get out, there was not stuff in it to make you speedy and something like that. They said it was like the real deal. But it just wasn't my cup of tea. I don't know. I was so, uh, I guess, obsessed. I look back now. I was just talking about the other night on the road. We just got home 3 days ago. It was a really rough tour in the East Coast, and I said, man, I look back, and I kept thinking, I just want to headline the Whisky one day. That was my mountain. I wanted to headline the Whisky someday on a Friday night. That was my that I wasn't thinking about the arenas and 10,000 people and selling millions of records. It really never was on my radar because it really did seem unachievable to me. But I thought, well, if we can become a local band and we're popular, and I have a job, and and we'll do this until we can't do it anymore. So I have to. People have asked me. A lot of musicians said, what's the secret, Don? And how'd you get famous? And I said, look, I'm not bullshitting you when I say this. I guess it's half talent and half luck. It's just the right time at the right place. If I wouldn't have met Dieter Dirks, you know, just by chance, you know, uh, I never would have got to sing on the Scorpions album. And the manager of Accept happened to be in there, and she took my cassette to Germany, and it's all well documented. And I got my first record deal on Carrera for a whopping 8,000. I mean, it was in marks, and I didn't know what marks, how much the difference was, and it was something like, I don't know, 30,000 marks or something, or 20,000. And I said to Michael Wagner, who was with me, I said, "How much money is that?" And he goes, "About $8,500."